Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, with episode 25 of my hopefully notorious Italy's Holocaust series, looking at the films from 1979 right up through 94 is sort of the area that we're looking at here. And for episode 25, had to do something special, right? And it's a first time watch for me, and it's a movie that I have dragged my feet on endlessly for the longest period of time, although it's been in my collection for a while. Wrapped, never open. Yes, Lonnie, I can hear you laughing right now, but I've seen it, Lonnie, and this is dedicated to you, buddy, our Saturday reviewer, Lonnie. If you've never seen this stuff, you need to, I'll try to remember to drop a link to Body Bags, but you need to. But, so the New York Ripper, a return for Fulci, back to earlier form, but with a splash of a little bit just recent. And, I'm talking, back when he was doing The Psychic, or, the cinematographer who did this effort, New York Ripper, a lizard and a woman's skin effort. Don't torture a duckling, which, ironically, the title prefigures into this in a weird way. It makes you wonder what he was thinking in terms of the otherworldly nature of our killer and how he disguises himself via a voice of a duck. Comment on that. But when you torture a duckling in the sense of post Gates of Hell trilogy, what you get is the New York Ripper, I guess. Yeah, some crazy stuff, man. This movie is golly. Still riding the Blue Underground. Probably will never get rid of this and never upgrade. I have no reason to. In fact, I can't even think what I have to say I'm going to get out of my system in this. And by the way, spoilers be warned, there's only one way for me to talk about this movie, and that is to not even think about spoilers. So if you've never seen it and you really want to see it, you probably should hold off and seeing this till you see it. But I'm going to say this, though. Sometimes people have an easier time wading into a pool of a certain film by wading into certain essays or podcasts, YouTube videos. Reading up, Chas Balaam's great piece on Fulci in this particular Gore Zone, number 10, I believe, which is phenomenal. Or just getting into an essay by Troy Howarth and his Splintered Visions is phenomenal. Or Lucio or Stephen Thrower's Beyond Terror, the films of Lucio Fulci. I read both those essays. I listened to the podcast by Hysteria Continues on the New York Ripper. That's down below. I do believe one ought to be somewhat informed before they start talking about something. And by the way, I needed to wade my way into this pool before I turned this thing on, and I watched it last night. Let's start here. I always go along with Italian Horror by Jim Harper. New York Ripper's in here because it falls within our years, right? And I just want to. He begins with this. Where is it? Where is it? I'm off a page. Sorry. Here we go. Just the first opening paragraph of his review. The New York Ripper is undoubtedly Lucio Fulci's most notorious film and one of the more infamous titles in the Italian exploitation canon. It also marks the end of the director's so-called golden age that began with the 1979's Zombie. Does an unrecognized classic lurk behind all the accusation of misogyny and sensationalist violence? Or is the New York Ripper just another piece of unsavory trash? I agree most in part with the former, I think. Does a classic lurk behind? Well, I think it does fall in between there, and we got to deal with the violence aspect against women and whatnot. But I also wanted to share this. There's one particular quote by Stephen Thrower I wanted to share with you. And by the way, first, look at this, man. This is one of the more iconic posters of all time. I mean, it does not get any more iconic than that particular poster. Whether you see the movie or not, or ever seen the movie and will see the movie, you got to agree the poster is pretty fantastic. Here's the quote by Stephen Thrower, and I think it really gets to the heart of a lot of what we're going to talk about here. The New York Ripper is a nihilistic vision of hell on earth. No one matters. No one cares. A child dies a slow emotional death alone in a septic aftermath of the killings, crying over shots of a callous New York. Fulci's film offers a powerful vision of a world where love has curdled away into poison and death. As if that's not... And by the way, that quote's down below if you like that quote and want that quote. Just remember to quote, throw around that, right? So the New York Ripper, episode 25 here from 1982. And I know James Couch, our Sunday reviewer, Body Bags, is going to do this on our 82 week. So look forward to that, although he probably won't deal with spoilers, as I will, for obvious reasons. Oh man, where do we begin? Let's begin with the director, Lucio Fulci. He's really fresh off his Gates of Hell trilogy, The House by the Cemetery, City of the Living Dead, and The Beyond, considered maybe his masterpiece, although Don't Torture a Duckling, in terms of his gialli. His whole filmography is insane. For the Apocalypse, one of the best Westerns. I absolutely love that Western. But going all the way back into the days of comedy, and then post New York Ripper, in his golden era, probably in terms of horror, it probably is from 79, from Zombie to the New York Ripper. That is his heyday. And tucked in between there, you got The Black Cat, you got Contraband, you got, a slew, right? Jack Hedley, who plays Lieutenant Fred Williams. You got Paolo Malco. By that, Jack Hedley was in Bridge Over the River Kwai and a bunch of other stuff. Paolo Malco plays our Dr. Paul Davis. Of course, we know him from The House by the Cemetery, right? The dad. I'm just going to name the big ones here. Faye, Almanta, Suska. Faye is probably the linchpin. She is our heroine, and she is the linchpin of the entire film, I think, in her attack sequence on her. Of course, Andrea Occhipinti plays Peter. I'm just going to get it out of the way. Peter is our killer. We'll come back to him. Daniela, Doria, Kitty. She is a prostitute who Hedley, Lieutenant Fred Williams, is sleeping with, which is a very curious scene. In which the killer is going after her, and he sort of drags his feet because presumably, he doesn't want the whole world to know that he's in a relationship with a prostitute for, again, obvious reasons. And that creates, I don't know if I've ever seen quite a film or quite a sequence like that. It's sort of weird. Not weird, it's just, oh man. Lucio Fulci comes in as the chief of police, and the sequence dialogue between him and Hedley is awesome, especially when he's like, "Can we talk in private somewhere?" And Hedley, or I said Lieutenant Fred Williams, is like, "Yeah, there's a church down the street," and that opens up, Pandora's box in terms of what he meant by that exactly. Has the church completely lost its grip in terms of the high moral ground that used to at least restrain some of this more the uglier nature of man? I don't know. You can read, like any film, subjective. You can read so much into it. It's interesting though. The conversations that take place between Dr. Paul Davis, and by the way, Barbara Cupisti gets in here as Davis's assistant. She's not in a lot, but she is in there, of course, stage right? But the conversations, the relationship between Lieutenant Fred Williams and Paolo Malco as Paul Davis is also a really important aspect of this film. The cinematography, again, a woman in a lizard skin, right? Tomasi is back on editing. Of course, he's been there for a long haul, although these guys are going to drop off after this one, man. Sacchetti has a little bit of a role in the screenplay, and I think I know where it is exactly, because it really does fit what I know about Sacchetti, and that has to do with the aspect of Faye's attack sequence. And there is a sort of a nightmarish quality where she endures a sort of a hallucination nightmare, if you will, right in the midst of all of that, in which she is faced with the very real prospect, or weird prospect, that how does Peter who she has a loose relation. I don't know if it's ever really explained, the relationship there, but she has this really weird otherworldly sense about, like, there's something wrong with him, there's something off with him. Why did she have, and we find out that she has hallucinations via I think it's Paul Davis, Paolo Malco's character, who goes to great length to dig up stuff on her to see what he can find out. So, you know, there is a, let's just do this way. There is a mad killer, psychotic killer who's gutting women in the most atrocious way possible. And that is the aspect of this film that is very hard to watch. And I'll be honest, I looked away, I squinted, I even used the fast forward button a little bit. It is what it is. I don't think you have to completely be glued in 1010% to get the gist of what's happening. More times than not, I did see, and it's weird because, well, okay, so you're dealing with some really serious violence against women. I think the question remains exactly what motivates Peter to do this. I don't think it's as easily as explained as some people, you know, and it has to do with his daughter, right? Again, spoilers abound, okay? We're going to get into the sort of the psychology of this a little bit, I think. And so this hallucination, I really think the subway attack is really the crux for which this entire film really rests upon. You have the red herring, which I think is one of the greatest red herrings ever in a film. This guy, Mikos Rezadi. What the heck? I know I have it written down here somewhere. Come on now. Rossini, and Mikas. However you say it, man. Let's just call him Two Fingers Mikas. One of the greatest red herrings ever. In fact, his own demise comes at his own hand, apparently, because he's so freaked out that he's going to have to account for all of the murdering that's going on. It is sad. It is so depressing. As mean of a guy as this guy probably is, he is not the killer at large, although he goes after Faye because Faye fingers him, and he doesn't want, you know, to be fingered for all of this, and ultimately he takes his own life by putting a bag around his head and suffocating himself. It's really dark, man. It's really, there are some aspects to this film that really shocked me in a good way, and then there are aspects to this film that shocked me in a not so great way. You know, stuff has been said about Fulci in terms of why did he go this far deep, and so, you know, during the video nasties over there in the UK, they just sent the movie back to Italy. They didn't want to deal with it, and I can see why. To a point, I can see why. My question is with Fulci is why, you know, is it a matter of too many people are salivating over the gates of hell and the violence, even though it's cartoonish, it's fantasy, it's not real, grounded in any type of real reality. It's a Lovecraftian, nightmarish world that he created. Is this a way of taking violence and flaunting it in the face of people via a grounded realist world, which you can't stomach as easily as you can, say, watching The Beyond a million times or City of the Living Dead? That type of violence is a little bit easier to, I'll even say it, enjoy. It's a movie, it's fantasy, and the New York Ripper's a movie, it's fantasy. None of these women were really hurt in the way that's being, you know, laid out there cinematically. That doesn't change the impact of this film and change the impact of some of these scenes. But like you take the woman, I think it's the one at the sex show, and again, you know, a lot of excessiveness to certain qualities of this film. But you know, you take her, and when she is killed, and when you view her body just laying there on the floor, this poor girl, and she was killed in the most brutal way imaginable. Just, I mean, it's not hard. I'm trying not to visualize it in my head, but you got this sort of Bava-esque with the lighting. In fact, I think one of the camera guys, who worked with Baba is in this film working, and so you have this green lit room, and as the door opens, red comes in, and then the door closes, and so with the lighting is masterful. But the violence is tough, and you get into it's sort of the morality of certain. You got a doctor's wife who ultimately is viciously killed, but then again, the red herring comes up multiple times in various different situations, and it's excellent in terms of wanting to. It's like Fulci's like, he is our guy, is he or isn't he? And and so there's a scene where she finally, and it's great. It's horrifying because when women get away from this guy, they seemingly right into the killer's hands. And we need to talk about that with Peter. But the detective Fred Williams is awesome. Davies, you even have a scene in here where presumably Paolo Malco's character is gay. We see him buying a gay magazine, and not sure Lucio's point on that, but to maybe say, look, I got nothing against some of the lifestyles being displayed here, so let's just get that straight out of the way, because he's a likable character. In fact, I liked him in House by the Cemetery, so I mean, obviously I'm going to like him. I really like his character performance here, and what he has to offer in terms of his relationship with Lieutenant Fred Williams. And I know I'm already going on time here. Let's just get to the crux of things, man. The main scene here, and my original take, or at least part of take, and we'll weave that into the end, I guess. And that is Faye's attack. She's on a subway, and you can tell it's a heavy nod to Maniac. I think there's another heavy nod going on in there as well. But it begins on the subway, and it's, of course, Mika's character who is chasing her for reasons we're not sure why, what his full intention is. If he's just going to rape her, attack her, I don't think he's going to kill her. He's not our killer, but he's not a nice guy either. So let's get that out of the way. And so, all the way through, she's running and fleeing from him. It's a long chase scene, which sort of is a throwback to Maniac. But when she finally makes it topside into the city streets, the first thing you see is a movie theater. Presumably, we're on 42nd Street. Maybe we are. And on the movie theater, lettering is playing An American Werewolf in London. And I thought, it's fascinating that that's there in there purposefully, I believe, because more than Maniac, as we're going through the subway and the chase, I thought to myself, God, this reminds me of An American Werewolf in London. And then you come up topside and you see that lettering. It's like, and then I got to thinking about it. In terms of the quacking in the duck, and not so much is explained by that, except this insanely psychological. I mean, this guy's just off his rocker. But his daughter is sitting laying in a bed in a hospital, presumably with a degenerative disease that is killing her. She's going to die. One of the things I have not heard mentioned either is the fact that mom, it's relayed to us, has taken off to Brazil and left the dad to deal with the daughter. The dad is all but disconnecting himself, and this is Peter, right? As she lies, now they're carrying on a bit of a relationship over the phone, and a lot of that has to be, this play duck or whatever, this thing going, this child type thing going on, and he sort of takes upon himself not just her misery and her pain, and not so much that a child is not going to let on just how miserable they are. A parent will take that on because we feel miserable for them. But his wife has abandoned them and abandoned him. And I wonder if his violence against the women in this movie has more to do with his wife abandoning him than it does with his daughter never being able to fulfill the role of being a woman. Because you think about it, a lot of the women he goes after have serious, from certain points of view, serious moral issues going on. And it's a leap for me to say, well, his daughter's never going to be able to enjoy what? working in a sex show, enjoy what? Having sex with other guys and her husband gets off on it? I mean, that just doesn't make sense to me. What does make sense to me is all the hurt and misery and suffering that he takes upon himself, and the fact that his wife abandoned him. He hates women mainly for that aspect, I think, and that begins to make a lot more sense. And I wish that would have been fleshed out a little bit more in terms of its explanation towards the end, which the finale is awesome. You got a wonderful moment where Faye, okay, so when Faye is running from Mikas, she thinks she's safe, and she runs bam smack into the killer, who we know is Peter, right? She doesn't, which makes it, you know, he must have been concealed some way, but he goes after her with his knife and ultimately hits the corner of the theater or the building right there. This will come back into play later on. And then she gets away again, and then she has her hallucination in which she visualizes Peter within that said hallucination. And this is where I wonder if Sacchetti comes in, because, you know, Sacchetti was a very heavy writer in the Gates of Hell trilogy, and he tends to be on the more supernatural, philosophical side of things, where Fulci tends to be more grounded in earthly matters, earthly things. And I wonder if Sacchetti's imprint is not this hallucination nightmare sequence with Faye. And maybe even towards the very end, when Faye goes up, she ends up realizing that Peter has a daughter. Once she's injured and ultimately gets out of the hospital, he brings her home to his house so she can feel safe and whatnot, right? Because at that point, she still feels safe with him. But she, out of curiosity and wondering, something just seems off here, she ends up going up the stairs into Susie's room, which I believe is his daughter, Susie, and she finds paperwork that tell her he's got a daughter in the hospital. She ends up going to visit her. Dr. Davis and Fred Williams ultimately go visit as well, as they're piecing things together in rapid order towards the end, and they start nailing it down that, okay, now we have motive. Now we know who our guy is. And at the end, she's in the kitchen. She comes home and she's in the kitchen making dinner, whatnot, and or is about to begin to make dinner, and she sees one of the knives in his knife rack, and it's blunted, broken, and so she starts to piece things together, right? And ultimately, she starts to go upstairs. He realizes something's going wrong. And that might have been where they get the phone call too, where his daughter calls him, I think. And she starts to go upstairs. Well, he's like starts to look for her and starts to come upstairs, and he starts to panic and freak and go into his psychotic state. She meets a man, and she has the knife that he attacked her with. And man, she goes down, man, and she's just like in a Hitchcockian way, man, just right through. Gets him twice good. He goes down the stairs. He falls, seemingly unconscious. She comes down. Of course, in a great fit of rage, he comes right up, grabs her. And at that point, you think, oh man, he's gonna have the last. Our heroes, Fred Williams and Dr. Davis come in at the last second and shoot him dead, which is just, I mean, like I jerked out of my seat. I'm like, what? Holy crap! And then you get a little bit of the explanation in the car. So a bit of a UK Euro thriller, crime thriller, serial killer, you know, which harkens back to early, and the staircase scene is really harkens to Argento. It is a great Argento moment in how, in Hitchcockian, in its ending, right, and where we go. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to throw in here real quick. I think I've said pretty much everything on my thing. And so, you know, my final thoughts on this, I know I'm running over, but this is a special episode 25, so forgive me. I think, yeah, really in the end, I think you got a guy who's been abandoned who tragically has a daughter who gets this disease. He doesn't know what to do about it. Mom leaves. She goes to Brazil, abandons him. All of his hurt, his hatred inside wells up and begins to be carried out in a way that seemingly still, I mean, I don't know. You know, the women he generally chooses makes you wonder if there wasn't other issues in the marriage going back that would have incited that kind of hatred as well. But this has more to do with his wife, I think, and mixed with all the hurt and pain of his daughter. And so, I mean, that's sort of my, and the transformative nature of his psychosis, it reminds me of An American Werewolf in London. You know, you just imagine this guy who goes from normality to this monster, and this guy does the same, more mentally, albeit. He just goes out and he will just bludgeon and brutally murder someone in ways that it makes it extremely hard for the casual viewer like me or you to sit and actually watch uncut through, if you get my meaning. You know, this is where Argento, though, with a viewer perhaps would put pins under our eyes and make us watch. But I get the point. We probably should be careful about how much we enjoy violence as it is on screen, regardless of context. Because the real world violence is, you know, look at Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Real world violence is different. And it is harsh, and it is real, and it is out there. So anyways, I don't know, a few weird takes. Did I enjoy this movie? I enjoyed aspects of this movie. Do I ever want to watch it again? I probably won't. And if I do, I'll probably start at chapter 12 and go to the end. I don't know. There's certain sequences I really do appreciate. Conversational pieces I appreciate. I love what's working underneath in terms of the gialli and the mystery, the red herring. I love all of this. And I just think he could have self-censored himself a bit, even though he probably had a pointed reason, and that's fine. A director has every right to have that pointed reason. And I think I've done my due pit to at least watch it and try to throw out my comments as they are. But you know, this is definitely not comfort food item for me. These Gates of Hell are more comfort food in a sense, right? So anyways, Lucio Fulci, episode 25, The New York Ripper. Have you ever seen it? What do you think? What do you think of my An American Werewolf in London thing? Did you ever think about that? Anything else? Comment, hit the like, sub if you haven't. Appreciate it. And look for my review of The Evil Dead Rise on Wednesday in Body Bags. As always, we leave these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream.
We might be useful to you.